Hello, fellow scribes, La here, and this is going to be my first book review for BookTube. So that is kind of scary. I'm a bit nervous. I actually recorded a bunch of reviews a couple weeks ago and then found out that during the recording process, I had this giant wad of fuzzy lint material stuck in my glasses. I don't know. So then I basically had to scrap 5 videos, and that was not fun, let me tell you. Now, with most of the book reviews that I plan on doing, I intend to have myself a little drink, and usually it's of the alcoholic kind. However, today, my first book review is actually a middle grade graphic novel, and so therefore I decided to go with something that recently came out. It's like a limited edition, and keep in mind that none of this is sponsored, but I wanted to try myself that new berry Dr. Pepper, and so I'm not typically a soda person, but I thought this would be really cool to try. Well, it smells like regular Dr. Pepper, so I don't know. Not much to it, just Dr. Pepper, which I like Dr. Pepper, so it's pretty good. That was a little underwhelming, but good, I guess, nonetheless. So let's get started on our book review, shall we? So I'm doing The Magic Fish, which is a middle grade graphic novel, and it's written by Trung Le Nguyen. I hope I pronounced that correctly, and if I don't, Trungles can send me some very strong lettered email or strongly worded email, and I will be perfectly okay with that. I apologize in advance if I end up butchering any of these names. I did try my best to research how to pronounce them, but you know, the dialect might not convey correctly. But in any event, I got The Magic Fish, and that was pretty much going into this BookTube thing. I wanted to start out by getting back into my reading sessions and doing something quick and easy. And so in February, and yeah, I know, in February, I read this graphic novel. And it was a very quick read. I was able to get through it within, about an hour and a half, give or take, taking my time with it. And I got it through the Rainbow Crate book box. And so if you don't know what Rainbow Crate is, it's an LGBTQIA plus subscription book box. It comes with a hardcover book and a self-published or indie published ebook, and then a bunch of different merchandise. And so this was a 2021 somewhere. I don't remember which month this came through, but I figured that this would be a good starting point to read. Not only did the cover really entice me, and I am all about, I'm OCD about a cover jacket, perfectly fitting like a square. It's pretty darn awesome. So yes, that was my first pick. But before we begin, and before I get into everything, what I want to do on this review and every review going forward is to post the stats. So without further ado, let's post those stats, shall we? The Magic Fish focuses primarily on 2 characters. One is Tien, or her Americanized name is Helen, or should I say westernized name? I'll go with westernized name. And then the little boy who's named Tien. And basically the general synopsis is that the mother and father fled their home country of Vietnam and are trying to learn English in a Western country, where Tien, who I believe was born in this Western country, is, a naturalized citizen to some degree, and is trying to figure out how to come out as gay to his parents, because his parents don't speak English very well, and in English, there is no Vietnamese translation for, his identity as being gay. And basically the graphic novel goes through both stories and utilizes fairy tales to kind of act as a communication bridge between mother and son. And so that's generally the summary of what transpires in The Magic Fish. Because this is a graphic novel and it's pretty quick to get through as a whole, I probably won't ramble too much about this story and everything behind it, because otherwise I'll definitely be getting into a ton of spoilers and giving away most of the process as far as how the story plays out. But I wanted to touch and highlight some really nice points that I enjoyed. First off, it is kind of a slow ramp up. It starts out really slow and it builds over time towards an ending of sorts. And it's not going to be a big ending, because it's not. This story is kind of about like a slice of life situation between the mother and son and the two backgrounds that they are both coming from. That's why it was kind of a slow buildup for me. It took me a few pages to really get into it, and it took me a little while to understand how the information in the story was being presented to the reader. What's really kind of cool and crafty is that there's actually 3 different perspectives that you get. You get Helen's perspective, you get Tien's perspective, and then you get the fairy tale itself that's being told. And so the author actually uses monochromatic coloring of red, yellow, and blue in order to convey which point of view is currently being presented to the reader. Now, usually it's pretty obvious, because you've got the mom usually dealing with her own past history and her trauma of fleeing Vietnam during a crisis situation. And then you've got Tien and his schoolmates and everything that's going on with him. But then you've got the fairy tale perspective where it's just this brilliant blue. And then even the art in the fairy tale itself is super detailed. And, it comes alive a lot more in the art, in the artistry, compared to when you go back to Helen and Tien, how the artwork is a little bit more simplified. There's not as many line work details by comparison. There's not a quality shift so much as just a more simplified, because it's more reality, as opposed to where you're dealing with fairy tales. You've got all these really elaborate dress designs, really elaborate character designs, and even the mundane characters in these fairy tales usually have a little bit more embellishment to them as far as line work and is concerned on that front. So that was really an interesting way that the author communicated the information visually in order to overcome the way the graphic novels usually present themselves. I would have to say that my favorite fairy tale out of all of them is The Little Mermaid, and that's the last fairy tale in the lineup. There is a little bit of a twist that kind of goes on. They change the ending a bit, and this is what Tien uses to convey him being gay to his mother. And it's the strongest piece for me, mostly because I like where the twist went, but it wouldn't have been the strongest piece had all of the other fairy tales not come before it. So while it is my favorite, I do acknowledge that it was a build up to that final stretch, and I do appreciate that a lot. I also find a lot of sympathy with Helen's story, because she literally had to leave her home and country to find and build a brand new life, and she's constantly dealing with that guilt where she questions herself whether she made the right decision for herself and her family. In general, there's a lot of components to her side of the story that I really resonated with. However, the graphic novel is meant to center mainly around Tien as he's growing up as a gay kid, the child of an immigrant family. And there's a specific and very unique dynamic when you're dealing with that particular family structure where your parents are from another country, they're trying to learn the language, yet you were born and raised in this country, so it's native to you, but then you also, have your second language. While the story doesn't resonate with me on a personal experience level, interestingly enough, I did grow up having friends whose parents were from other countries. And whenever I'd go to visit them, there is this interesting dynamic of being submersed in their culture at their house, while when we're at school, it's almost like a different world that, that my friends had to bounce in between. So I can definitely whenever I see how the magic fish plays out, I can definitely compare it to those past experiences with friends and acquaintances from school in those similar situations. And I feel that this particular story, because it's kind of like a life experience from the author, will resonate really, really well with individuals that come from that background. And then on top of that, I feel that this is really good for the middle grade area where, you know, they're questioning their identity, they're questioning, you know, maybe their preference of relationship types and stuff like that. And so this is a great graphic novel that can really speak to them as well. So what kind of rating would I give this book? As you can see, it's beautifully published. It's very well constructed, beautiful colors, very good quality, and then I happen to get a signed plate copy. However, personally, I'm gonna have to rate it as a rent for myself. While it is a beautiful book, it is very quick to get through. It's about an hour read, give or take, depending on how fast or slow you get through stuff, and it is a higher price point, both on the hardback and the paperback. I didn't check the ebook copy, but essentially, if you're collecting graphic novels, you tend to buy them physically. Not all the time, but they tend to be the more popular output. For me personally, it doesn't have a rereadability to it, and therefore I would recommend renting it and maybe having it in a local library of that nature, because it is a very compelling story. However, if you happen to have a middle grade reader in your house, I would highly recommend it as a buy. Maybe gift it to them so that they can add it to their library and whatnot. But for me personally, as the type of reader and demographic that I am, this is definitely a rent and not a full purchase. So what I'm probably gonna do is donate it to either a nearby local library or something like that, so that a middle grade reader can enjoy this over and over again, and that it can be shared amongst others. And that's it. So what do you think? Do you agree, disagree? Leave your comments down below, because I would love to hear from you on that front. Don't forget to check out my high fantasy adventure debut, Key of Arcandus, now out at any major online retail store, or you can request it through your local bookstore. And I'll see you again next time, fellow scribes.